The scream didn't come from Jaden Lewis. It came from a classmate whose phone shook in her hand as two officers pinned a quiet, bookish 17-year-old beside the faculty parking gate. Jaden didn't swing, didn't shout. He stood by his art teacher's old sedan with earbuds looped around his collar and a sketchbook under his arm. It was Friday, and his mother, Dr. Amara Lewis, had texted him, "I'm 5 minutes out." The patrol car arrived first. Then the second. Then the wrong assumption crashed into a boy who had done nothing but exist in the wrong silhouette. "Matches a description," grunted Officer Brad Nolan as Sergeant Cole Mercer tightened his grip. "What description?" Jaden tried to ask, but the words dissolved under the weight of uniforms that had decided inquiry was a luxury. Phones rose like a small forest of truth. A teacher rushed forward, too late, while the school security camera blinked, blind on purpose, toward the sky. By the time a siren deeper than the others rolled in, black SUV, no light bar, federal plates, the crowd had split into two kinds of silence, the kind that trembles, and the kind that gathers itself to remember everything. Assistant Director Mara Quinn, the FBI's special agent in charge for the region, stepped out first, jaw tight, windbreaker snapping. She wasn't here for jurisdiction. She was here because 5 minutes earlier, an encrypted ping had flagged a name in a federal civil rights monitoring system, Jaden A. Lewis. That surname tugged a thread in her memory. Amara Lewis, former Air Force JAG. The woman who once taught a base full of pilots and MPs that procedure without conscience is just choreography. Quinn's eyes fell to the boy on the asphalt, to the officers standing too straight, and then to the phones that would outlast any report. She didn't yell. She gave one order: medical now. The command cut clean through the scene. Paramedics ran. The crowd exhaled. A classmate sobbed. He didn't do anything. And the statement felt less like defense and more like an indictment of how cheaply innocence is priced. At Trenton Memorial, machines began their cold recital. Beep, hiss, hum. Jaden's eyelids fluttered against sedation. Back at the school, Mercer rehearsed his lines to a body cam he thought favored him. Noncompliance. Safety concern. In the hallway outside ICU, a nurse whispered to Amara, "They laughed, ma'am," when they brought him in. The words didn't make Amara cry. They organized her. Amara didn't wear a uniform anymore, but the muscles that made her a trial lawyer had memory. She cataloged timestamps. She marked names. She asked for copies of logs nobody offers without being taught to fear the person asking. When Quinn finally reached her, their eyes did the handshake. "This won't be quiet," Quinn warned. "Good," Amara said. "Quiet built this." The nurse adjusted Jaden's blanket. On the monitor, a single green line lifted and fell like a promise that refused to quit. The hallway smelled like bleach and bureaucracy. Somewhere a printer jammed. Somewhere a lieutenant called a city attorney. Somewhere a kid muttered, "I got it all," and uploaded what he saw. In 5 minutes, the video would be everywhere. In 5 hours, a script would be ready to explain it away. But in this minute, a mother touched her son's hand and whispered, "We will not let them narrate you." That sentence was the hook that would carry the next hour, and the one after, to people who had been waiting their whole lives to hear someone say it out loud. Before sunrise, the video spread from locker rooms to living rooms. Jaden standing still, officers moving like a decision had already been signed. The first local statement said, "Ongoing investigation." The second said, "Heightened tensions." The third floated a phrase that always arrives when accountability feels too heavy: "Alleged." Yet something new crept under the headline. The clipped, controlled voice of SAC Mara Quinn, recorded at the curb. All body cam data, secured. Dispatch audio, preserved. Officers, relieved pending review. People paused. The feds had taken the receipts. Amara didn't rush to a microphone. She went to a printer. She pulled his chart, tabbed the blank where mechanism of injury should have said what all eyes saw. The attending doctor avoided the word assault. Amara said it for him, softly. "Write what's true." He met the gravity in her stare and nodded. In the cafeteria downstairs, Amara met Malik Sharp, an investigations analyst she trusted when trust still felt like a currency that spent. Coffee steamed between them. "Cole Mercer," Malik said. "Trained in a private, tactical compliance program 2 years ago." Brad Nolan, fresh transfer from a department that just quietly settled a juvenile force case. He slid a thin folder across the table. "There's more." They sketched a simple plan. Preserve what exists, expose what rots, protect what matters. Malik's script pinged county servers for training contracts, found a vendor called Civic Response Solutions, and unearthed an internal slide that might as well have been a confession. Repeated exposure reduces community outrage. Standardize language to minimize liability. Amara blinked at the phrase that had excused too many funerals. I feared for my safety. Next to it, the slide suggested alternates for variety: volatile posture, immediate compliance imperative, environmental threat. Language sharpened to carve accountability out of reports. At noon, a city spokesperson frowned into cameras, asking for patience. At 12:03, students walked out of class in quiet rows, held up copies of Jaden's honor roll certificate, and chanted only one sentence: write it true. In the emergency stairwell, a nurse named Rhea told Amara, I heard one of them say, next time he'll learn. Amara handed her a card. If anyone pressures you, call. I'll stand in front of it. Rhea tucked the card behind her badge like a talisman. Quinn convened a multi-agency briefing. A state AG rep wanted a slow roll. Quinn didn't. We have digital evidence, live witnesses, and a mother who files cleaner motions than half of us. Move. She wasn't angry for the cameras. She was angry because some rooms still thought pain was a PR problem and not a person. By sunset, the officers' union issued the usual. We support due process. Amara wrote her own. We support due truth. She didn't click post. She saved it, printed it, and taped it inside Jaden's room over the clock, so every minute read like a mission instead of a delay. And then, the surprise, a message slid into Malik's encrypted inbox from ED, retired. The note was one line and a bruise. Keller taught our in-service to clean the scene with clean language. I kept copies. I'm done being brave only in my head. Attached were memos, rosters, and a training outline that swapped humanity for control. Amara breathed out through her nose, a soldier's exhale. They didn't just fail, Malik. They practiced failing. He nodded. Then we practiced telling it better. The part ended not with a shout, but with a printer finishing a stack of truth. The camera could cut on the sound alone. The city tried a trick older than the building it met in. Flood the story with context. An old juvenile rumor. A grainy still of a hoodie. Anonymous quotes about attitude. But by then, the public had heard Quinn's 3 words: secured, preserved, relieved, and had decided to taste every claim before swallowing. A church elder hosted a vigil and didn't pray for peace. She prayed for memory. Peace comes after the truth, she said, not instead of it. Amara wrote a 28-page complaint to the State Civil Rights Division and a separate packet that didn't wait for any office to decide what mattered. It wasn't just about Jaden. It was about pattern. 7 youth incidents in 2 years with eerily similar phrasing. A vendor selling compliance de-escalation that started with escalation. An email from a deputy chief captioned, "We must manage optics before outcomes." She included Rhea's statement, anonymized. She included the school's maintenance ticket showing the lot camera had been out for 3 weeks while fined for everything else. She included the civic response slide deck's quiet horror. When she finished, she set the packet on the nightstand. You're not a footnote, she told Jaden. You're the headline that fixes the story. Malik stitched 2 timelines, the department's version and the lived one. Every discrepancy got a tab. Every non-compliant turned into the video of a boy standing still. At the same time, Assistant Director Quinn did the thing people never think federal agents want to do. She listened. She heard from students, teachers, neighbors, the school resource officer who confessed he'd been trained to control the optics first. She said one sentence to each. Thank you for trusting me with your risk. It turned out justice isn't only about courage. It's about distributing the risk of telling the truth so one person doesn't have to carry all of it. The instant karma arrived in an unexpected place, a city council emergency session staged to project control. A council member tried to dismiss Amara as emotional. She smiled like someone used to cross-examinations and said, correct. I am emotional. I am also evidentiary. Malik cued a projector. Onto the chamber wall, the civic response slide appeared, the bullet that read, by incident 4, public attention statistically wanes. Gasps. A few heads dropped. One head shook in shame because he had initialed the PO for that training. You didn't buy safety, Amara said, voice steady. You bought a method for making people stop caring. Across town, an elementary art class made Get Well, Jaden, cards covered in bright stars and tiny basketballs. The nurse taped them like windows around his bed, and the room got softer edges. He's more than what they did, Rhea told a volunteer. We'll surround him with who he is. By night's end, the department suspended Mercer and Nolan, pending outcome. A poll showed most of the city believed their eyes. But Amara didn't measure success in polls. She measured it in the way a janitor who saw everything felt safe enough to bring her a scrap of paper with a timestamp he'd written down because something felt wrong. Justice is cumulative. It stacks on the small bravery of people who know which doors stick and who jiggles them anyway. The counterattack opened where it always does, her past. Clips from Amara's Air Force JAG days spliced into commentary that mistranslated integrity as insubordination. A history of conflict, one Sharon winked. The goal was simple: turn the mother into the story so the child could be filed under complicated. Amara refused the bait. She filmed a single-take message at her kitchen table in a gray sweatshirt with MOM cracking across the front. Yes, I fought systems before, she said, calm as an oath. No, I didn't lose. I learned where the gears are. The video traveled like relief. It let people stop apologizing for their anger and start organizing it. A veteran wrote, "Ma'am, you're right. Procedure needs conscience." A teacher wrote, "We're rewriting our discipline rubric. Send us your packet." A retired sergeant wrote from an email that looked like a confession booth. "Keller taught us to own the narrative. I wish I had owned my conscience sooner." Quinn briefed a joint task group. "We are past PR," she said. "We are in policy." The U.S. Attorney's Office listened hard. A state senator stopped waiting to see which way the wind blew and asked, "What if we made body cam footage presumptively public within 48 hours for youth incidents?" A civic group drafted model language. A mother on a porch in Ward 6 printed the draft and said, "I can sell this to my block." Meanwhile, in the hospital, kindness practiced itself in specifics. The night custodian dimmed the vestibule lights to make the ICU hallway gentler. The cafeteria manager learned how Jaden liked his broth once he woke and practiced for the day he could eat on his own. Kindness doesn't trend, but it lasts. On an afternoon so ordinary it felt like a trap, Jaden's fingers twitched. Rhea caught it, pressed the call button, smiled in a way only people who have watched machines for days know how to smile. Amara arrived breathless and didn't sob. She inhaled like she'd been underwater and had finally reached a surface that would hold. The city tried one more deflection: curfew. The answer wasn't rage, but choir. 100 people stood outside the hospital at dusk and sang "Lean on Me," a song so overused in commercials that it somehow became honest again in real mouths on real sidewalks. A reporter asked Amara whether she believed in forgiveness. "I believe in sequencing," she said. "Truth, then accountability, then repair. Forgiveness lives after those." The clip became a civics lesson. Instant karma made another entrance the next morning when the Civic Response CEO went on cable to defend pattern management. The host asked, "Would you sell it to the school your kid attends?" The CEO said, "That's not a fair," and the feed froze on a face that looked a lot like regret finally recognizing itself. Trial. Wood paneling. Air that smelled like lemon cleaner and old arguments. Mercer and Nolan in suits that wanted to be uniforms. A jury that walked in suspicious of everyone and walked out responsible for all of it. The prosecution didn't spin. They rolled the footage. They played dispatch. They showed the civic response slide about shaping outrage. And then they called someone who had spent years thinking silence was safety, retired Sergeant Elias Dorsey, who cleared his throat and said, "We were trained to write pain in passive voice." The defense tried to turn seconds into alibis and adjectives into absolutions. Chaotic, they said of a boy standing still. Threatening posture, they said of a backpack strap. But the jury had already seen the only posture that mattered: absolute stillness under state hands. Assistant Director Quinn testified about chain of custody and why this time nothing got lost. She didn't editorialize. Her restraint was the editorial. Amara never looked at the officers longer than necessary. She looked at the jurors like a teacher who believes a class can pass a hard test. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, there were cheers outside. Inside, Amara just exhaled, and put her palm on the back of the bench like she was steadying the furniture for someone else to lean on. Instant karma didn't feel like lightning. It felt like gravity finally doing its job. That evening, the better miracle arrived in a hospital room with paper stars taped to a window. Jaden opened his eyes longer this time and found his mother. His voice scraped like it had been borrowed and returned. "Did I mess up?" he asked, because so many kids are taught to apologize for surviving. "You did everything right," Amara answered, because the truth heals faster than reassurance. He blinked. A tear ran. Maybe his, maybe hers, maybe both belonging to the same body, living in two people who refused to quit. Later, a reporter thrust a mic toward Amara and asked, "What do you want now?" She said, "A policy that outlives this headline." Instant karma corrected the mix angle. The reporter actually listened. They called the bill the Jaden Lewis Youth Safety and Dignity Act, but Amara kept reminding people it wasn't a monument. It was a manual. 48-hour body cam release in youth incidents. Independent review panels with student and parent seats. A ban on the phrase non-compliant in reports without a specific behavior attached. Mandatory de-escalation that starts with the officer, not the child. It didn't fix the world. It fixed the next decision. That's how worlds get fixed. At City Hall, a lobbyist tried to charm a swing vote with public safety cliches. A high school senior named Alina waited her turn and said into the mic, "I want safety from becoming a suspect when I'm waiting for my ride." The chamber applauded because truth, when spoken by someone who has to live with the policy, sounds like music. The vote passed. Not unanimously. Honestly, Jaden's rehab was slow. Step, rest, the exact rhythm justice uses when we stop pretending it's a sprint. He made a track on his phone called 48 Hours. It sampled hospital beeps and the choir from the vigil and his mother's voice saying, "Truth, accountability, repair." When he posted it, streams ticked up in neighborhoods that had learned to mute sirens in their heads. Kids drew chalk wings under their feet and wrote, "You don't have to fly. Just don't let them clip you." Amara ran, not for applause, for a seat that came with a vote and a calendar full of meetings about boring things that keep people alive. "I'm not here to clean my hands," she said at her swearing in. "I'm here to keep them on the work." Quinn watched from the back row, hands in pockets, eyes soft. Afterward, she told Amara, "When you said procedure without conscience is choreography, I wrote it down. We're teaching it at In Service." Instant karma isn't only punishment, it's retraining. On a quiet Saturday, Amara and Jaden walked past the school mural, a boy in mid-stride, light opening under his sneakers. He read the caption aloud, laughing. "I look taller." "You are," she said. He squeezed her hand. A younger student waved from the sidewalk, called out, "Ms. Lewis." "We got the cameras fixed." Small victory, enormous meaning. They kept walking. That night, a mother in another city opened her laptop, found a PDF called Write It True, a community guide to youth safety oversight, and realized someone had already done the boring, beautiful work of formatting all the steps. She whispered, "Thank you," to a room that made it sound like a prayer. Across town, an officer sat in a training and learned different language for the same moment. Not command the scene, but calm the child. He didn't roll his eyes. He wrote it down. That's how cultures turn. When the credits roll on stories like this, people ask, did justice win? The better question is, did responsibility wake up? In this one, it did. Not perfectly, not permanently, but enough to remind a city that respect shouldn't be a reward. It should be the default setting. Enough to teach a country that the powerless were never powerless. They were just unheard. Enough to show that instant karma sometimes wears a badge and sometimes wears a name tag, and sometimes shows up as a neighbor who prints flyers and a nurse who tells the truth and an agent who secures the files and a mother who refuses to let anyone else narrate her child. Jaden turned off his bedside lamp. "Mom, yeah. If they ask me what I want to say at the next meeting, can I tell them we don't want statues? We want systems." Amara smiled into the dark. "Tell them," she said, "and make them write it true."